Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram. So in the last class, the last four verses which we were studying, the 177th to 180th, 177, 178, 179 and 180. So there we were studying that it is the mind which creates the universe. It is the mind which makes the universe moving, as if it is constant, all the movements, that all the flow which we see in this universe is because of the mind. It is a mind which is as if, like the wind, the way the cloud moves in the wind, as was studied in the 180th verse. Yena eva brahmyate vishwam vayuna eva abhramandalam. Abhramandalam is a cloud. That's the 180th verse which we studied in the last class. The abhramandalam is the clouds. The way the vayu, the wind, makes the cloud move similarly, as if it is the mind which is making the universe move. All the motion, all the flow, all the transformations that we see in the universe is after all the projection of the ultimate reality Brahman, which is immovable, which is the only reality. In that, the motion, all the flow is superimposed. So that's why it is saying it is a mind which is making the universe as if moving. Brahmyate. It is as if moving. So we find this same idea very nicely depicted in one of the poems of Rabindranath Tagore. It's very nice that it is the song written by Rabindranath Tagore. The song starts with a line that Shimar Majhe Oshim Tumi Bajao Apun Shur. So it is the Asima, it is the infinite that is appearing as having lot of demarcations in the form of name and form. So it is the infinite which is playing its tune as if through this limitation. And in that song, the two lines come which speaks of the same idea, that Yena eva brahmyate vishwam vayuna eva abhramandalam. What is that? That tomay amay milon hole shakoli jay khule Bishwa Sagor ঢেউ খেলায় উঠে তখন দুলে. So when the mind comes in association with the conscious principle, the entire ocean, this universe is like an ocean. Vishwa Sagor, this is like an ocean. In that, the waves starts rising and falling. ঢেউ খেলায় উঠে তখন দুলে. And this entire universe starts as if moving in the form of waves the moment the mind comes in association with a conscious principle. So that's why even the word samsara means that we say this world is nothing but samsara. So these terms are very significant terms. What the samsara means? Samsarate iti samsara. Samsarate, that which is flowing is samsara. Here nothing is permanent. Everything is flowing. That's samsarate iti samsara. Then that's the words which are used for the world is something very significant. One word which we use is samsara, that samsarate iti samsara, that everything that is flowing is samsara. And another term is prapancha. So this universe is nothing when the mind, through the five senses, is trying to project the ultimate reality. It projects as this world of name and form, which is after all nothing but our five perceptions. This universe is nothing but what the five perceptions is being projected through the mind. That's what the universe is. That's the meaning of the word prapancha. These five senses have intermingled with together so nicely to have created this universe. That's what is meant by prapancha, prakrishta, rupena pancha. These five have mixed up in such a nice way to give a sense that this is a tangible reality. So that's the meaning of the word prapancha. So once you see this as reality, we see this as reality. When our mind projecting through the senses takes this as reality, as we say again and again, but it is the self which is echoing behind all this, which says, I am eternal, I am ever fulfilled. And now the deluded self is trying to find this eternity and fulfillment through this flow. And from where all the suffering starts. All the suffering starts from this attempt of the self to realize its eternity and fulfillment through the world of flow, samsarate. This constant change. And that entails in suffering because it can never be done. You can never hold onto the flow. The flow can never be stopped. And your attempt to grab the flow, all the suffering entails, and that's how we get trapped in this world of five senses. So that's the reality. But is there a way out? After speaking of, just like a doctor, first you have to diagnose. So the diagnosis is done, that it is the mind which is the main culprit. Now after the diagnosis, there should be some treatment. What's the way out? So that will be spoken of in the 181st and in the 182nd verse. That how the same mind which is the cause of all our bondage, the same mind can liberate us if we know how to purify it. If I can purify the mind, then with the same mind we can attain liberation. So that's been spoken of in the 181st and in the 182nd verse. So what is the 181st verse saying? Tat manaha, the same mind, tat manaha, shodhanam karyam. You have to purify, shodhana, purify it. Shodhanam karyam, prayatnena mumukshuna. And that purification is not a very easy task. It is a quite assiduous process. We have to do it for a long time, meticulously, with full dedication, nishtha. So that's what is being indicated by the word prayatnena. This prayatna means lot of effort. By whom? By one who has already developed a yearning to go beyond this world of name and form. That's the mumukshu. So those who are mumukshu, those who have developed that yearning to go beyond this, beyond this world of sensate experience to that absolute reality of that non-dual consciousness, has to do it assiduously with full dedication. What they have to do? The purification of the mind. Shodhanam karya. Mana shodhanam karya. Vishuddhe sati cha etasmin mukti kara phalayate. And once you have purified the mind, Vishuddhe sati, once it has been done, cha etasmin, this is the same mind with which you will be attaining mukti, kara phalayate. And that mukti is not something waiting for me after death, far away in space and time. That far away in space and in time, that is, heaven is somewhere far away in space and after death. No, it is kara phalayate. Just when you are having a fruit in your hand, kara means your palm. When you are holding a fruit in your palm, kara phala. So as palpable as that the liberation is, it is something which is achievable, attainable here and now. So that's what is the meaning of the word kara phalayate. So the seeker, so what's the meaning of this verse? The seeker after liberation must carefully purify the mind. Shodhanam karyam, mana shodhanam karyam. And when this is purified, Vishuddhe sati etasmin, that then what happened? Mukti kara phalayate. The liberation is an easy access, just as a fruit on the palm of your hand. So that's why we will find that Swami Vivekananda, when he was in the West, when he was delivering lecture on Vedanta, he told that, very interesting, that as it is a Christian world, the background of most of the people is Christianity. So it is easy to relate to the words of the Bible for those people. And that's why Swamiji is saying very interesting thing, that if all the scriptures of the world is destroyed and somehow only one sentence of Jesus is retained, it remains. What's that? Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. All religions will revive from that one sentence only. So that's the idea which we find even in this verse, that purification of the mind is the be-all and end-all of our spiritual journey. So, but now what's that purification means? That when we say purify the mind, what it means? So to get rid of rajas and tamas, and to get established in sattva, the pure sattva. So what this sattva, rajas, tamas means? These three gunas constitutes the entire universe. This universe is nothing but the conglomeration of these three gunas, sattva, raja, tama. Now for most of us it is just mere word. Satya means illumination, rajas, activity, tamas, darkness. And that's what constitutes the universe, what it actually means. So that when we are perceiving this universe, how this universe comes into existence, when the conscious principle is coming in association with the mind, what happens? Then this external stimuli, whatever, in the form of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, these are the five senses. In whatever form this stimuli comes and activates the mind. Now this mind is not a tabula rasa, it's not vacant. All the informations are already there. The external stimuli just activates a very particular type of information. A particular type of information. That when I give the example of the red flower, when you are seeing the red flower, the redness, along with all other colors, the idea of redness with all other colors is already there in the mind. That particular stimuli, when it gets converted into nerve current and that nerve current reaches the brain, then only that red color is projected. That gets activated. Similarly, the shape, the texture, the smell, all these are this idea of these varied sensations are already there in the mind. Only a particular type of the shape, particular texture, particular smell, that will be activated. That comes out from that, all the hidden informations in the mind. They gets activated and they conglomerate and is projected in the form of that flower, that which has a name, which has a rupa, particular name, particular form, is projected in that form. So that's how we are finding this this entire world, what it is. Now with this idea you will find actually illumination means this external stimuli comes and illumines the mind. What is darkness, tamas? All the information which was in the mind was in darkness. That speaks of the tamas. The external stimuli helps in illuminating a particular type of those informations which are in darkness from the tamas. That a portion of the tamas, a particular information which was in the darkness, that gets illumined. So that's from tamas, the sattva is being transformed. Sattva is a transformation of tamas. And once it is illumined, as per our tendencies, we react in some different way. That some are devotee, they may just go and pluck the flower and put it in the altar of the deity. Some are just, they love flower. They want to have a beautiful vase, most probably in the living space of their house. So they will prepare a vase and keep somewhere in the table, in the living space of their house. Or someone likes to just grow a beautiful garden. So there is no question of trimming the flower or cutting the flower. He or she will be motivated to take care of the plant in a much better way so that it gives more flower. So the responses are all different. So this responses speaks of rajas. When a particular type of information is projected, is illuminating the mind, so that speaks of tamas getting converted into sattva, and that sattva is getting again transformed into rajas, activity. So all these three gunas is what constitutes our universe. Can we think of anything else apart from this? That all the universe which we see outside is already there in the mind? That the external world as such is acting as a stimuli to project, to activate a particular set of information and project it to create this world of name and form. And once this world of name and form is projected, we react to it as per our tendencies in a particular way. So this speaks of these three gunas: sattva, rajas, tamas. So now we will understand, when we say rajas, it's activity, tamas, darkness. So now when we try to meditate, that's what speaks of. We are trying to illumine the mind with some thought. So that is pure sattva. That is pure sattva. I am trying to illumine the mind with a particular thought. So let the thought be aham brahmasmi, that I am the non-dual conscious principle. I am not the body, not the mind, not the senses. So this is the thought with which I try to keep my mind illumined. Now this is a thought. When I illumine my mind with this thought, is it supposed to create any response? No. It is pure jnana, a knowledge, which as such has no corresponding action. Why? Because when I am saying I am the Atman, I am not this body-mind complex, I am not this universe, I am the conscious principle, then along with that the idea comes that this entire universe is a projection because of the mind. I am not this. So this is the knowledge which in no way entails in action. And at the same time, when this knowledge which is being generated in the mind, once it's being generated, if somehow it attains laya, it somehow gets dormant, then what happens? The mind will go in the state of tamas. So when we start meditation with this idea of that I am Atman, I am Brahman, there's a Vishuddha Sattva, bereft of Rajas and Tamas. But what happens as I am not habituated? We find it's common happening with all of us, that either the mind is getting restless, it is getting distracted into some thoughts, or if I have somehow been able to concentrate the mind, I will find as I am never habituated in meditation, for the first time my mind got concentrated, what I will find, it is going to a state of torpidity, lethargy, drowsiness. So this is the big challenge in our meditation, that when I am trying to keep the mind alert in one thought without reacting in any way, either it will get distracted into some other thought and start its activity, rajasic activity, or if it becomes a bit placid, immediately it will go into a state of torpidity or laya. That speaks of tamas. So for anyone who is a novice in the process of meditation, they can never have Vishuddha Sattva, that pure sattvic thought. It's impossible. It is tainted with rajas and tamas. Through practice, as one gets an adept in practice, what happens? This rajas and tamas gradually starts getting eliminated. They start getting eliminated, and more the mind can remain in that concentrated state. And that's what is the purification which has been spoken of in this verse. That to have a state of Vishuddha Sattva, just the way we bring out the metal by smelting from an ore, the mind also has to be smelted through the process of meditation to get rid of all its impurities, so that at last it shines forth with a pure sattva. And that's the idea of Vishuddha Sattva. So this is the purification of the mind. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we will find this has been explained through the concept of parinama, that it's not easy thing. In this verse, we have found the word prayatnena, that it's an assiduous journey. Why? At the beginning, when I start meditation, my mind, I will find, is getting distracted very easily. There's a state of sarvarthata, sarva artha. It has various purposes. So it is getting, constantly it is jumping from thought to thought. At the time of meditation, you will find, oh, that's the work I have to do. That's the thing I have to do. All this thought starts coming at the time of meditation. It is jumping. That's what's meant by the word sarvarthata. So the mind is just like a lake. The conscious mind is just the surface of the lake. All its subconscious impressions are like the bubbles which are coming from the bottom of the lake. And all the conscious thoughts are like the stone thrown on the lake. So the surface of the lake gets disturbed by two things. If I throw something on the lake will break into ripples. That speaks of the disturbance of the mind. The external world is coming and interacting with the world. In another way, it gets disturbed. The bubbles coming from the bottom, the moment it comes on the surface, it bursts, and that again creates ripples. So these two ways, the mind is constantly getting agitated. So now, when I'm meditating, I am consciously trying to keep the mind in one thought. There's a conscious attempt. But the mind, the subconscious mind, is full of sarvarthata, distractions. So it is coming, it is bubbling from the bottom, coming and bursting on the surface of the lake called mind, and it is disturbing the mind, throwing away the ekagrata vritti, and it is going back to its original state of sarvarthata. So what's the way out? So in the Yoga Sutra, nicely it has been spoken, that always remember one fact, that all these subconscious impressions, how they have saturated the subconscious mind. How? That sometime in the past, maybe in this birth, or maybe in some births, in some previous births, I have done something, thought something consciously. Once I do anything consciously, once I perceive anything consciously, it's not lost. Immediately it gets saved in the subconscious mind as samskara, as a sublateral impression. It is there. And once it gets saved, now and then as memory, it will come up as bubble and burst on the surface, disturbing our mind. So all these sublateral impressions which are in the subconscious mind, with which I am born, they're already there. They are constantly bubbling up and is not allowing my mind to be in that one pointed concentration. It's not allowing. So when we hear that, we get disheartened. We think, oh, then it is not impossible. It is not possible because the subconscious mind is so strong. Conscious mind is very weak compared to that subconscious mind. And what's the way out? So in the Yoga Sutra, very nicely it has been said that this is the clue, as all the conscious thoughts become subconscious. So yes, it is true that at present our attempt to keep the mind focused in ekagra vritti is very feeble. But if I go on trying repeatedly, again and again, I will be failing. But with each attempt, I am just saturating my mind more and more with the ekagra vritti. It is also that each and every attempt to keep the mind conscious, that itself gets converted into samskara and goes and gets saved in our subconscious mind as sublateral impressions, as a subliminal impressions, samskaras. And the more they are saturating the subconscious mind, the more the sarvarthata vritti, they start getting annihilated. Because these two are contradictory, sarvarthata and ekagrata. The more your mind gets saturated with this ekagra vritti, the mind gets freed from sarvarthata vritti. So this process goes on. That speaks of the prayatna. So we have to be doing it assiduously with our constant practice, not in lips and bounds. That today I do and again I just forget about it for days together, and then again suddenly I sit for meditation. With all those lips and bounds, we can never purify our mind. So with prayatna, with constant assiduous practice, with full dedication, if we do it constantly for quite long time, then what happens? The first parinama happens. What is the parinama? Means transformation. A time comes when all the sarvartha vritti is cleared off and the subconscious mind is full of ekagra vritti. That example which we give again and again, a cup full of impure material, impure liquid, turgidities. So if it is already full to the brim, now if I pour pure water in that cup, what will happen? The turgid contents will start flashing off, will splash off. They will spill. And as they spill off, the turgidity will be diluted. The water, all the turgidity will become more and more dilute. A time will come, all the turgidity will be washed off and the cup will be full of pure water. So that's what happens with the mind. But we have to be very, very, assiduous. That Drida Bhumi has to develop. A very strong foundation has to be formed by Nairantarya, constant practice, Nairantarya, Satkara Sevita. These are all Yoga Sutras. Satkara Sevita means with full dedication, Nairantarya. Constantly I have to practice, and then a time will come when I will find that my mind is now full of ekagra vritti. That becomes the habitual state of my mind. My mind is now habitually focused, concentrated. That's the first parinama. The purification has started, but it doesn't end there. If I can really concentrate my mind in one thought, that's when what happens, the thought stops. All the thought process will stop if I can really keep it in one thought. Why? Because the polarity is resolved. As we were saying, this world is samsara. Everything is flowing. But everything is flowing because mind is flowing. And how the mind is flowing? We will find, if you look at the mind, you will find it's never focused in one thought. It is jumping from thought to thought. So now it is thinking A, the next moment it is thinking B, again it is C. So it is jumping. They say that in a day we think more than 60,000 thoughts. So many thoughts. It is constantly jumping. But another clue of mind is at a time it cannot have more than one thought. The mind jumps from thought to thought, but at the same time it cannot do multitasking. At a time it has only one thought. So that's the clue. Now if by assiduous practice, if I can keep the mind in one thought, that becomes the state of my mind. Only one thought. Now that has become the habitual state. But as we were saying, that thought means it has to jump from one thought to another. That polarity must be there. Because any flow speaks of polarity. In this world, if you just observe, wherever there is a flow, there must be a polarity. What's the polarity? Like we say, water flows from higher level to the lower level. If both the levels are same, the water flow stops. If there is a difference in potential, then only the current flows. If both ends have same potential, no current. If there is polarity in magnetism, then only we can find that magnetism. If both the poles of same magnitude, of say both are north poles of same magnitude, they will be negating each other, nullifying the magnetic effect. So once the polarity is resolved, the flow stops. So here also the same thing happens. When that ekagra vritti becomes the only vritti, habitual vritti of your mind, and it gets intensified. Then a time comes, because of its high intensity of one thought, all the polarity has resolved, it cannot jump from thought to thought, and then what happens? The mind becomes niruddha. It gets suppressed, all the thoughts get suppressed. And Yoga Sutra claims that happens only in meditation. We have an idea in deep sleep, most probably our mind is arrested. No. In Yoga Sutra, very nicely it has been described that the vrittis are still there in the state of sleep. Only those vrittis have no contents. Abhava pratyaya alambana vritti nidra. Pratyaya means the content of the wave, content of the vritti. That is not there. Abhava pratyaya. There is no pratyaya. But the mind is still active. The waves are there. They say the mind can be stopped only through meditation. When the ekagra vritti becomes really intense and the polarity is resolved, then the mind falls off. And this projection is stopped. It's not there for the time being. And then immediately we get established in ourself. So this speaks of the purification of mind. So that ekagra vritti speaks of the state of vishuddha sattva. When I have achieved that state, then only it can take me to the state of this niruddha, state of nirodha. That, as has been spoken, yogas chitta vritti nirodha. This definition is given at the very beginning of the Yoga Sutra. That once it has been arrested, the mind collapses, the projection, you go beyond the projection. That example which we give again and again. The prism breaks the white light into the spectrum. If the prism is removed, the spectrum merges with the white light. So here also the mind is like that prism. The moment it collapses, this world of name and form merges with the absolute reality. And that's the thing, that's the realization of this, which takes us to that state of kaivalya. These words are very important. Kaivalya means kevala. That actually I only exist. There is no duality. It is because somehow, because of ignorance, the mind came into existence. That also came from the consciousness only. That mind is the first evolute of the consciousness, and from that the other evolute in the form of this universe comes into existence. But first evolute is the mind. That also came from the consciousness. So that when it is resolved, it has been purified, and it's is in no way acting like prism, then the entire reality then the entire universe merges with that absolute. Once that happens, then only we are established in real viveka. That now we know what's real, what's unreal. And now for me, this world of projection in no way can affect me. Why? Because I know it's a projection. It's not till now I was interacting with it because I took it to be a tangible reality. When I know it's a mere projection, the question of interacting with it to find, to get the objects of our sensate pleasures from it, that stops. It cannot be there. That Swami Vivekananda is that a wonderful example of the mirage. That he was passing through the desert, he was thirsty, he saw a huge reservoir, and as he was thirsty, he was approaching towards it. Suddenly the reservoir vanished. And that made him realize that, oh, it is just mirage, it's just the projection. As the desert is, so this reservoir is being projected. The desert is the substratum, but it is not real, it is just a mere projection. So previously he have heard of mirage. He had an intellectual idea of this mirage. Today he has realized what actually it is. Next day when again he is walking through the desert, again he sees. Now he has again came back to his mind and senses. So he do see that reservoir again. But today there is a great difference. He is no more being dragged by that reservoir. The previous day he was dragged by that reservoir because he took it to be real. Today he knows for certain that it is a mere projection. In no way you can take it as a tangible reality and interact with it. So what happens? The question of the world binding me is no more valid for me, is no more applicable for me. And that's the state of mukti, that which has been spoken of in this verse. That's what he's saying now, just in this verse. The vishuddha sati, once that mind gets purified, cha etasmin mukti kara phalayate. It just becomes like a fruit in the palm of your hand. So that's the beauty of Vedanta. It never speaks of post-mortem liberation, that after death you have go to heaven. Here In this same Vivekachudamani, a verse will come that what's the purpose of life? Jivan mukti sukha prapti hetave janma dharana. That's the only purpose of human birth, not the censored pleasures of life. That sometimes we are deluded, we think to enjoy the censored pleasures of the world is the be-all and end-all of our existence. Swami Vivekananda nicely depicts says in one of his lecture, if that was the fact, then we are very, very, very poorly equipped. You just see the other animals have much more keen senses. The way the dog can smell, the way the dog tastes, other animals, the way they can see, they can hear, they can smell. Our senses are quite pure or poor. We don't have that keen perception. So as a human being, to enjoy the world, that's not our uniqueness. What's our uniqueness? As in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, again and again, Sri Ramakrishna in simple words, he says, Manav Jiboner Uddesho Ishwar Lav. The purpose of human birth is to attain, is to realize the spiritual dimension of our existence. That's what is meant by Bhagavan love. That's the purpose. And that's the purpose which in Vivekachudamani also is being vindicated. That to attain that state of liberation is the purpose of human birth. And that also, you do not have to wait till death. That after death you go in space in certain place and in time, it means after death. No. Here itself, ihaiva. And to enjoy the bliss of that liberation in this very life, this Jivan Mukti is the purpose of life. That will be spoken of in this Vivekachudamani itself. And that's what is being indicated here. That Mukti Kara Phala Phalayate. Just it becomes as palpable as a fruit in your hand. Just the way when you are having a fruit in your hand, you see with your eyes. It is something tangible. So Mukti becomes something as tangible as a fruit in your hand. So that's the idea which has been spoken of in this verse. So it's the entire process is nothing but the purification of the mind. The mind, which is the cause of our bondage, when it is purified, it becomes the cause of liberation. Now, how to purify our mind? That, from the Vedantic perspective, is spoken of in the 182nd verse. What it is saying? Mokshaika saktya vishayeshu ragam nirmulya sanyasya cha sarva karma sat sraddhaya ya sravananishto rajasvabhavam sa dhunoti buddhehe. So all the aspects of practices for purifying the mind has been spoken of in this verse. This mokshaika saktya, this speaks of the tivra mumukshuta. The one should be yearning, have an intense yearning to attain that liberation. That is being spoken of by the word mokshaika saktya. He who by means of one-pointed devotion to liberation. As we find Gautam Buddha used to say that how should our practice be, our one-pointed dedication is like a rhinoceros. He used to give the example of a rhinoceros. When rhinoceros is chasing something, because of its huge body weight, when it is moving, how to save yourself from a rhinoceros? Just deviate. You can never, in speed, cope up with a rhinoceros. It has a very terrific speed. So how the way you can save? You just move out of the path. That it, because of its tremendous body weight, the impulse is such huge that it cannot immediately turn. So it will just move straight. Rhinoceros can never take a deviation. It just, when it runs, it will be running straight. Nose dive. It will be just giving a nose dive. That's the way it moves. So our dedication for liberation should be like that. Nothing should deviate us. That's what is meant by mokshaika saktya. Vishayeshu ragam nirmulya. Our attachment to the Vishaya, to all the sensate pleasures of the world, has to be uprooted. Not just a little control, uprooted. Vishayeshu ragam nirmulya Sanyasya cha sarva karma. And to renounce all actions. So whenever our Shankaracharya is speaking of karma, you should remember that before the advent of Shankaracharya, the idea was through yaga, through yajna, as has been prescribed in the Vedas, one can attain heaven, which is nothing but a perfection of this world. All the positivities of the world minus its negativity is the heaven. That's the idea of heaven. So all the sensate pleasures without the suffering, that you can say in another way, is the ideal of heaven. So it's a desire of more intensified desire, that what I enjoy in this life, amutra, after my death, I enjoy it in a much more intense way and for prolonged time. That's the idea of heaven. And for that these yajnas are there. So all these yajnas were sakama, were full of desires. Action meant yajnas. That all our actions to sustain ourselves, as in Bhagavad Gita has been mentioned, the Sharira Yatrapi, that for Sharira Yatra, for Loka Sangra, for the integrity of our social texture, the actions which we have to do, that we cannot stop. But whenever he is saying of karma, karma means those actions. Sarva karma. The word sarva may sometimes just confuse us. Oh, Shankaracharya, that has happened for thousands of years. Sarva karma means all actions. Sarva karma means all the actions as has been prescribed in the Vedas. That's what sarva karma means. All the yaga yajna. There the karma means all the yajnas, sarva karma, all those yajnas. That is what is meant by the word sarva karma. In the Vedas there is no mention that all the nitya naimittika karmas which I have to do, for that the Vedas is not going to instruct us. Vedas is going to instruct us for the thing which we don't know. All the things which are known by our sensate world. For that there is no need for any scripture. It is something which is not known by us. For that, so the Vedas is prescribing all the karmas which can take us to that world which is unknown for us at present. So sarva karma means all those actions as has been prescribed in the Vedas which can take us from iha to amutra, from this world to the other world, and help us in enjoying in a much more intense way the sensate pleasures which we are enjoying here. So those karmas you have to renounce. Because the idea of heaven, even in the Vedas they mention, you do enjoy heaven. And when they say that heaven is, the life in heaven is of infinite span, that infinite is again a relative term. Compared to our life here on earth, it appears to be infinite. Even in this world, if somehow a dog has the intelligence to compare its life with our life, human life, it will think us to be gods. Because it lives just for 14 years, we live for 100 years. So in relative, compared to the dog's life, our life will appear to be infinite. So it is something prolonged. It is something which appears to be infinite from the present concept of time and space. But actually it is not infinite. That also comes to an end. Because in the Vedas they say, any finite action cannot result in infinite result. That yajna, however meritorious act we may do, it's a limited act. How can it produce something which is infinite? So it cannot be infinite. So even in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, we find it is mentioned, Kshine punye martyolokam vishanti. Though it can be a very long span, you again have to come back to this world of transmigration again. So there is no as such atyantika mukti. So Shankaracharya, when he is saying sarva karma sannyasya, he is saying the idea that by doing all those yagas and yajnas or some humanitarian acts with the aim of attaining heaven, know it for certain, it is not going to give you that ultimate fulfillment. So renounce them. Does all those selfish actions, sarva karma sannyasya. Sat sraddhaya ya sravananishto. So this, and with full faith, sraddhaya, we have to be Sravana Nishtho. In Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, you have to resort to such practice of hearing, cogitating on what you have heard, the words of the scriptures from your Guru, and once you have cogitated, found out its real meaning, then you transform your life by internalizing them through the process of Nididhyasana. That's what Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana means. So that has to be done through Shraddha. Why Shraddha? Shraddha means faith in the words of Guru, faith in the words of scriptures. So when I hear for the first time, I may doubt that is it true? And it's quite natural, because with my limited understanding, sometimes it is very difficult to understand the words of the scripture. Even in the present day, you will find most of the people at the very first, at the onset of hearing that, they will simply rubbish it off. They will say it's of nonsense. So here comes that Shraddha. Just the way I cannot learn any knowledge, what to speak of spiritual knowledge, without Shraddha. That all the advanced learning, the science, I cannot explain it to a primary student. He also has to have faith that when we speak of all the scientific discoveries, if he asks that prove it to me, it is almost impossible. We have to say that it cannot be false, because the scientists, through their research, have went to this conclusion. You have to believe in it. When you grow, then you will develop quite advanced understanding to understand them. So all our learning starts with Shraddha. Without Shraddha, there cannot be any knowledge. So here also the same thing. Have faith. Yes, what has been spoken of may make no sense at all at present. So what you have to do with Shraddha, yes, this what has been spoken of is true, is authentic. The one who has spoken, he has realized it in his life. He is the authority. I have Shraddha, I have faith in his words, and have the humility, sufficient humility to accept the fact that my mind is not yet prepared, not yet that advanced to understand that truth. So let me cogitate upon it. Go on contemplating upon it. Just the way we do in our secular studies. Here also, cogitate upon it. Gradually you will find your mind is getting clear. All the doubts are vanishing. That's what Swami Vivekananda used to say. That why to study the Upanishads? When another direct disciple of Ramakrishna was discouraging, he was saying that after all, it is through meditation, that you attain the goal. Why to give so much importance to studies? So now these young brahmacharis were confused. Swami Vivekananda was insisting on the studying of the Upanishads, and some other direct disciple was saying that they are of no use. So when they put the doubt in front of Swamiji told, yes, what the other brother disciples are saying is correct. As per your spiritual evolution is concerned, this is of insignificant. This is all insignificant, almost no use. But why we study? That after all, it is through meditation we will go to that state. But why we study? And then the thing which he's saying is very interesting. To remove the cobwebs of our mind. That unless, that even a fool, in our scriptures they say even a fool, you cannot motivate a fool to do some action unless he knows what's the benefit I'm going to get out of it. Without prayojana, even a fool doesn't act. What to speak of an intelligent person? So unless the mind is clear through cogitation and you get some intellectual conviction, oh yeah, what has been spoken of in the scripture is true, it do make sense, then only you get that motivation to practice, otherwise you won't get. So to remove the cobwebs of the mind, this is required. Through Sravana, the first you hear, then with Shraddha you resort to Manana, and then you get the intellectual conviction, and then your real spiritual journey starts as Nididhyasana, to contemplate again and again, to make it something part and parcel of your existence. It becomes something internalized. Your life becomes a total transformation. It starts, that your stimuli response conditioning changes, because now your paradigm has changed. Based on that new paradigm, you have developed a new stimuli response conditioning. Just in the life of Ramakrishna, we find that we get lured by wealth, by seeing currency notes, coins. Our hand wants to grab them. And in the life of Ramakrishna, he couldn't touch any metal. The stimulus-response condition has changed because this world is mithya. This is the thing on which he did contemplation so deep that it transformed his life. That is the idea of nididhyasana, that let it not be a separate knowledge, just a knowledge which has nothing to do with your life. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say very nicely, that the so-called educated people of Calcutta are like vultures. They soar very high up in the sky, but their entire focus is on the carrion, in the rotten flesh somewhere, in a dungeon, down in the earth. So that's the idea, that with all those high ideas, somehow your entire intentions or your attention is again on this sunset plane of existence. That's what he means by vulture. So that won't do. Through nididhyasana, we have to make that idea as the be-all and end-all of our existence. As Swami Vivekananda very nicely says, that the entire spiritual journey is a knowledge, a different type of knowledge. That we have an idea, what's education? Gathering of information. He says, no. Take up one idea, live it, dream it, assimilate it, till it becomes the be-all and end-all of your existence. And then he gives the example of this pearl oyster. The pearl oyster, how this oyster converts a simple irritant like a sand particle into the pearl. He says, is this irritant sand particle, when it irritates, it falls on the oyster's body and starts irritating it, this oyster will be constant, it will dive deep into the ocean and it will start salivating over that irritant. It will go on salivating, and this saliva crystallizes at last to form the pearl. So that's what Swamiji is giving. So that is the nididhyasana. Once your mind is convinced with the idea, what the scripture has spoken, that you are the self, cogitate upon it, go on meditating upon it, go on meditating, you are as if salivating over it, so that at last you get transformed into a pearl. The pearl is formed. Your total life has changed. That transformation has happened. That is the nididhyasana. So that's what is meant by this sravana sat sraddhaya sravana nishtha. That sravana nishtha means nishtha in sravana. That is possible only when you have sraddha. And that only can lead to manana and then to nididhyasana. And then rajas svabhavang sadhanoti buddhi. Then all the rajas will be washed off and your mind will become prepared for taking you to that highest state of realization. So that's the idea. So mokshaika saktya, that means of tivra mumukshatva, vishayeshu ragam nirmulya. This nirmulya word is also very important. That we so many times give that example. That the vasanas which are vyakta, which are visible in my mind, that only I can take care of consciously. But there are so many other desires which are not, is manifested. They are all lying dormant. When the circumstances change, I am in some new circumstance, those new desires come upon my mind. And that way I will find they are innumerable. It is almost impossible to take care of them one by one. Then what's the way out? That whatever has manifested at present, I try to control them by practicing detachment, and that way I develop a placid mind. And now with that placid mind, it is possible for me to concentrate on that idea that I am not this limited ego, I am the self, I am the Atman, I am the Brahman. So this concentration is creating a mental module which will be hammering on the ego. That we were giving an example in some other class. It's just like Kalidasa. We said that Kalidasa, the fool who became one of the most wise person. So why he was full? That he was sitting on the branch on which he was sitting, the same branch he was cutting with an axe. So spiritually we also have to be like that Kalidasa fool. What that it is actually apparent foolishness. What's the real thing? In spiritual life, you develop a mental body, a branch. There are so many branches. The trunk of the tree has so many branches. Each branch speaks of one desire, one particular state of stimuli response conditioning. And you are developing a new branch. What's that? Aham Brahmasmi. When you develop that, then it is, once that branch is developed, now like Kalidas, as if you are cutting the same branch, because that will sever the bond of all the branches from the trunk. You are cutting the trunk itself. Sitting on the branch, you are cutting the trunk. Then all the branches will fall off. So that's the idea, that with this mental module, I am constantly trying to hammer off the ego, with which all the mental modules are linked. Just with the trunk, all the branches are linked. It's the same way. So, and once it is removed, what happens? Even this mental module, the mental module of your sadhana, that also collapses. So that's why they say that this sadhana cannot take us to the realization. It is just like a pointer. Once the mind is purified, it, along with other mental modules, all collapses at a time. That's the real idea of Nirmula Vasana. Shankaracharya gives a very nice example in some other context. He says, it is just like purifying the water with camphor. When the water is impure, in the olden days they used camphor to purify it. What they will do, they will put a piece of camphor in that impure water. First the impurities are cleansed, the water becomes clear, and at last you will find the karpur is also not there, it has evaporated. So this mental module with which you have created for your sadhana, that also collapses along with all other mental modules. That's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Hinche shak shaker moddhe noy, michri mishtir moddhe noy. That you may say that my love for spiritual practice is also a type of love, a type of desire, but that is not to be considered as a desire. Why? Because instead of binding, it will liberate me. So that's just this michri mishtir moddhe noy. That generally sugar creates acidity. But in the Kaviraj, in the olden days, they say the crystallized sugar, the michri. This crystallized sugar, that is used as an antacid. If you are having acidity, they say if you dilute this sugar crystal in water and drink that water, it acts as an antacid. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say that sugar candy is not to be considered as sweet, because its action is just the opposite. So this new mental module which you are creating as a love for your contemplation on yourself, this love is not to be considered as an inordinate attachment like any other attachment, because it will help you to uproot all the desires. That's the meaning of the word nirmulya, total. Just by consciously trying to get rid of all the manifested desires. That way you can never uproot all the desires. So that is required as the initial stage for calming down the mind. But once the mind is calmed down, this constant contemplation on the self alone can uproot all this Vishaya Raga. That alone. So now you will find that how the entire spiritual gamut of spiritual practice, the gamut of spiritual practices has been indicated in this verse. That you should have intense yearning. Without that yearning, we can never have this intense practice. The practice actually speaks, why we practice the same thing again and again? To create a strong impression in the mind, isn't it? To create a strong impression in the mind, we do that. Repetition helps in strong impression. But not only repetition. We will find any experience which is very intense, that need not be repeated, that creates a deep mark in the mind. We never forget it. That's just to give an example, that to memorize our texts, we go on repeating so many times, and then at last we find we have memorized, and then also we forget, again we try. But without any conscious attempt, it so happened that you were driving a car and suddenly you were about to have, not because of your fault, some other car was coming from the front, it was in the long run, wrong lane, and you were almost going to have a head-on collision. And just in the last moment, it was averted. The car which was coming from the opposite direction, that also stopped. You could also screech your brake, and you also stopped. The accident was averted. But the tremendous, what happened, because of the fear of death, of the fear of accident, my entire mind was so intensely focused. Now I will find there is no question of repetition. Throughout my life, I will never forget that. Even when I am in my deathbed, I will find that's the memory which is very vivid in my mind. Even if you have dementia, that's the memory. They say the long-term memories don't fade away. For all the immediate memories that fall off, all the old memories which has gone deep into your psyche, they still remain, even for dementia. They never get obliterated from your mind. So, for a deep samskara, not only repetition, along with repetition, there should be intense focus. And that focus again comes from prayojana. That unless you have a purpose, you can never have the deep focus. If you have a deep focus, repetition is not required. And deep focus, how is it possible? If there is a prayojana. Just to give an example of a surgeon operating on a patient forgets that for 8 hours the time has passed. He was not aware of his hunger, thirst, because he was extremely focused on the thing which he was doing. He knew a little mistake will be at the cost of the life of the patient. This prayojana, this need to save the life of the patient, gave him that focus. And that focus, once you have, the impression which is created is never lost. Now you will understand that why in Yoga Sutra they say that your success depends on intensity. Tivra sangvega namasanna. If you have tivra sangvega, immediately it happens. That's what is indicated by the word mokshaika saktya. That when you are having intense desire for liberation, then the other things are bound to follow. You need not have to repeat them for lives together. Immediately, that's why Sri Ramakrishna used to get angry when he used to hear that song, that Tera vanata vanata vani jai. That go on practicing, today or tomorrow it will happen. Well, he used to get angry. So what do you mean by today or tomorrow? It has to happen now. You should have that type of intensity. So that's the idea of this mokshaika saktya. Then other things will follow automatically. Visheshu ragang nirmulya, sanyasya cha sarvakarma. All the actions with the selfish motivation is bound to fall off, because why to relate to something which is a projection? I know the reality is beyond that. And then this with Shraddha Sravananishto, that you go on meditating upon that fact that you are the self, taking you to that ultimate realization and taking you beyond all the other impurities in the form of tamas and rajas, and taking you to the ultimate liberation. It all follows one by one because of that tivra vairagya, this tivra moksha ichha, tivra mumukshata, it happens. So that's what is being indicated in the 182nd verse, which speaks of the process of purifying the mind. So with this we will conclude our discussion today, and it is almost the conclusion of the discussion on Manomaya Kosha. One more verse will be there at last in the 183rd verse, which will discuss that as a conclusion that why Manomaya Kosha is not the self. So after discussing that, it will go to the next kosha, the Vijnanamaya Kosha. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskar.